I have gone from telling people how to get something to trying to teach people now how to be something. And being is the essence of what I'm talking about. You must be it. Whatever it is, you must be health. You must not be trying to get it from pills or a doctor. You must be it. You must think it, live it, and be it. The great tape that I was talking about was Earl Nightingale's. It's called The Strangest Secret. It's the most popular cassette tape ever made. Earl Nightingale's tape goes like this. He said, the strangest secret is that human beings become whatever it is they visualize themselves to be. The great secret, the strangest secret, we become what we think about all day long. The question is, what do you think about all day long? Now, I'm not talking about whether you walk around saying, hey, I'm terrific and I'm going to do great things, and that's it. This is not it at all. Creative visualization is understanding first how you think. You think in pictures. Do you know that? We think as humans in pictures. We don't think in words. If I say garbage can, you don't think G-A-R, there's a B in there, there's an A-G-E-C-A-N, a can, and you don't think like that. You see a picture of a garbage can. If I say microphone, you picture a microphone. If I say beautiful person, whatever, you have a picture. All of our thinking is done in pictures. The greatest contribution that psychologists have made in this century, and there haven't been many, all right? The great contribution is we have discovered that an image gets stored away in you, whatever you is, whoever you are, gets stored away within you exactly the same as an experience, as doing something. That your subconscious, whatever that is, wherever that is, it's like a robot. It just stores things away, and they stay there forever. Everything that happens to you is stored away. Your brain has trillions of cells. Not millions, not billions, trillions of cells. It is capable of things that are just so phenomenal as far as healing, as far as health goes, as far as success goes, and it all depends on how you see yourself. Now, you get trained as a young person not to see yourself as a very competent human being, especially you women. Most of you were trained not to think of yourselves as equal with men or better. When you were little girls, many of you were taught that in order to be athletic, that's not feminine and that's not appropriate, and you don't do that, and so you have a lot of these sentences. And I ask you about these sentences that you use in your mind. The I'ms. I'm nervous. I'm shy. I'm not very good at mathematics. I'm not a good cook. I'm clumsy. You figure out the I'm. Now, every I'm that you have, a lot of that was encouraged because you weren't encouraged to take risks. And you must take risks if you want to be successful in life. You must take risks. When you're a child, I've heard parents say, don't you go near that water until you know how to swim. And I think, there's something missing in that logic there somewhere. And so you train yourself when you're young because you believe that stuff. Not that it's anybody else's fault. You believe it. You believed it. You didn't have to. Now you got to take responsibility for buying it. And if it doesn't apply anymore, sell it. And if nobody wants to buy it, then just give it away. Get rid of it. All right? And change the images. Now, what kind of images do you have? I'm not standing up here in front of all of you people saying that all you have to do is put a different picture in your head and your life is going to turn around. I am saying, and get this, I am saying that you must start first with the kinds of pictures that you have. And then they will get stored away in you as reality. And when that reality gets stored away in you, you will start acting on that reality rather than on another reality. Now, the reality that many of you operate on is this. It's the cold season. There's a flu going around. 44 states have got it. You have fever and you get coughing and you're going to be tied up for 2 or 3 weeks and you're going to have to go to a doctor and you're going to get it because it's going around. And you expect it and you warn your children about it and you tell them, see, I learned from Mrs. Scarf because she was weird. She was wonderful. She was very influential, but she was weird. And she would say, like, if you leave the window open and you get a draft, you're going to catch a cold. And every time she told a kid that, I noticed that they had a cold the next day because I always wanted the window open, and there were about 9 of us sleeping in there. I never got a cold because I didn't believe that. I didn't believe you could get a cold from a draft when we were out playing hockey all day long in 40 degrees below weather. And then suddenly a little breeze is going. If you see it happening, if you believe it, then it's going to happen. You see, with visualization goes expectations. With expectation go the choices that you make. And it starts with the kind of pictures that you have.
I wrote a book a few years back called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based upon the ancient teachings of Lao Tzu in a book called the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu reminds us that all being originates in non-being. Jesus put it this way in the New Testament: it's the spirit that gives life. That you didn't really come from your parents. You really, all of us came from this place called spirit. And when you showed up here in this world, you showed up here from a tiny little drop of human protoplasm, a speck, if you will, and everything that was in that little speck that became you, everything that you needed was in that tiny little speck. One of the most important metaphors that I ever use is that the first 9 months of your life, from the moment of your conception until the moment of your birth, everything was being handled for you. There was nothing for you to do. You don't get consumed with the color your eyes are going to be or what your body is going to look like. It's all taken care of for you. You just surrender. I call it a future pull. And it's pulling. It's pulling you in the direction of whatever it is that you were supposed to be. And to me, it's not too great a stretch to say if everything you needed for the physical journey was already handled in there, then why not everything for the rest of the journey as well? All of your purpose, it's in there. All of what your personality, it's in there. Everything that you were to be, not just the physical you, but everything, if you just let go and allow. And so we're born. And we look at this beautiful little creature. As parents, I have 8 children. I've seen it happen many times. And you look at this beautiful little child, and you look at it and you say, great work, God. Great work. Couldn't be any better. We'll take over from here. And then we're surrounded by all these people, our family, our culture, wherever we go. And we begin to be told that we can't really trust in who we are. We have to trust in something outside of ourselves. So we're on a journey towards ambition. Once you begin to say, we'll take over from here, you introduce something, you just take this perfection and you just edge out the Creator. You edge God out. E-G-O. Ego. This ego is the part of us that starts to tell us who you are is not this perfect divine creation, this piece of God that you came from. It doesn't say that. It says who you are is what you have. It begins with things like our toys, and then our bank accounts, and then the possessions that we have. Before you know it, we begin to identify ourselves on the basis of our possessions. We begin to take on a set of beliefs about the more that I have, the more valuable I am as a person. And so we spend our lives taking these young children and immersing them in a culture that emphasizes more. It becomes almost a mantra of the ego. You have to have more. And the more you have, the more you are aware of how much other people are trying to take it away from you. The more you get consumed with how do I protect it and how do I make more of what I have. The dilemma here is that if you are what you have and things go away, then who you are also goes away in the process. Second component of this ego is the idea that not only is who I am what I have, but it's what I do. And what I do becomes this thing called achievement. And in this whole world of believing that I am what I do, we become consumed with this whole idea of my success, my value, my worth as a human being is based upon how much I accomplish. So I have to make more money, I have to get a promotion, I have to compete with everybody else who's trying to get what I have. We are taught this over and over and over again. All of our young people are taught this when they go out into athletics. The most important thing you can do is be number one, and you say, we're number one, we're better than everybody else. And we constantly find ourselves in this competitive notion again of believing that our world is one in which we have to compete. That's what the ego says. Now, the third aspect of this is the idea that I am what other people think of me. That is, I am my reputation. Particularly, this is relevant for young people who are taught that you have to dress the way other people think, and if other people don't like you, then there's something wrong with you. If you're consumed with that, then you're going to be something different every time you turn around. Now, this is particularly relevant with women, especially in relationship to the family. Women are often taught in our culture and our society that the only way that you can fulfill yourself is by how you relate to your family, to yourself as a daughter, to yourself as a mother, to yourself as a grandmother. And while these are very important and creative aspects of every woman's life, if that's the choice that they make, it's not necessarily the only thing. And many women feel that deep within them that they have a calling to accomplish something great, to make a contribution, and oftentimes will put it aside. So what I encourage women to think is, don't ignore that calling inside of you. Don't ignore the part of you that says you came here to create something powerful, and you have just as much of an influence in doing that, just as much of a right to do that as anyone else does. We move into then the later parts of the ego, which talks about something called separation. And the ego has a very strong belief system that who I am is separate from everybody else. And then another component of the ego teaches us that I'm also separate from everything that's missing in my life, from all the things that I'd like to have. And then finally, the ego teaches us the most egregious error of all. It teaches us that we are separate from God. And one of the simple constructs that you learn in the afternoon of your life when you shift into the meaning phase of your life is to realize that you came from a source. We can call it God, we can call it Tao, it doesn't matter what we call it. And that this source is everywhere. There's no place that it is not. It must be, because it creates everything. Everything comes from this source. Then it must be in me. If there's no place that it's not, it must be in me. And if it must be in me, it must also be in whatever it is that I feel to be missing from my life. If you know that, then in some way, everything that's missing from your life that you would like to have, you're already connected to it in spirit. And all you have to do is figure out a way to align yourself with that and have a knowing that you're already connected to it. You just have to bring it on its way.
Now let's take a look at what I mean by the word problem. In my heart, I feel that there is really only one problem for any of us. That is, when we allow ourselves to separate from God. But in a very real sense, we can never be separate from God. Yet, we often still believe that we have problems. The problems of disease, discord, fear, anxiety, scarcity, disappointments in others, and so on, are all in our minds. When we truly reconnect to our source, these feelings disappear. I use the word problem as if it truly exists, yet I know every time I use it that it's an illusion. So every time you hear the word, know that I perceive it as an illusion created by ourselves because we have separated ourselves from God. There's a powerful line in A Course in Miracles which reminds me of this lesson. It takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. We can learn to view every crisis as an opportunity, which wouldn't necessarily make life easier, but would make it more satisfying. We would never be able to view anything as a negative occurrence because we'd see everything as useful. Our conditioning is so strong that we often have far greater faith in our problems than we do in our ability to no longer have them. We often display a much greater faith in the power of cancer or AIDS than we do in the power to heal them. The evil, the pain, the anguish are of our own creation, and they represent opportunities to gain greater learning. I ask you to keep an open mind as we travel this path of healing to bring peace back into your life on a permanent basis. And now let me speak to you about what I mean by the word solution. I once sat in on a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The words of a sign on the wall kept gnawing at me throughout that meeting. It read, "Your best thinking got you here." I thought how true that is and how it applies to all of the circumstances of our lives. Our best thinking is exactly where all of our so-called problems exist. If we couldn't think about them, they would not exist. What we need is a change in thinking to realize that a connection to the divine is what eradicates our problems. You cannot send problems out of your life by attacking them or understanding them in more depth. Instead, you correct the error in your thinking that produces the problem in the first place. Once you bring a correction to the problem, it no longer has any validity, and it disappears. We correct these errors with the creation of a new spiritual delivery system. This is the basic introduction to the idea of having a spiritual solution available for every single problem. Here are some specific suggestions for removing doubt from your inner inventory. Keep in mind that doubt not only inhibits your sacred quest, but can also be a destructive force in your daily existence. Make a decision that you are going to meet the invisible God within, the loving presence, so that you will know her. This means being willing to spend time in the inner silence of your being. Create the time and space for quieting and listening. Do nothing else, but do this daily. Keep in mind always that doubt is produced by your ego. Doubt is not a part of your higher spiritual self. With this awareness, you can learn to observe your doubt rather than choose to own it. Make a list of the beliefs that you still hang on to which no longer serve you. Seeing them in writing will help you identify how absurd it is to stay rooted in the beliefs of others. As you examine your beliefs, see how many start with should and shouldn't. These kinds of sentences were your earliest training and may still occupy such a large space inside you that you no longer have room for any new knowings. Keep in mind always that doubt is a mental experience. If you want a thought to disappear, you can very simply send it away in this moment, just as you can refuse to think an unpleasant thought in any moment because you are in charge of those thoughts. So can doubt be eradicated when it shows up. Say to yourself as if you are two people, the one talking and the one listening, I have this doubt because I have allowed the persuasions of others to become my own beliefs. Now, I will think for myself and know that I do not have to live with doubt.
Part of me really knows, more than just believes, but knows that when you're born and when you show up here, your work shows up here with you. It's placed in your heart. And too often we ignore it in the name of fulfilling a destiny that has been laid out for us by other people and so on. So these people that I will be referring to, what I call ancient wisdom, this ancient wisdom came from people who felt something very profound in their hearts that they absolutely knew that they had to express. And it's almost as if you have to find within yourself what it is that you know you are here for and follow that instinct independent of what anybody else out there might think about it, without being objectionable and nasty and recalcitrant and so on, but still having within you this knowing that I have certain music that I have to play. I have certain things that I have to do. And I feel it deeply, and I feel connected to that. And not allowing myself to do it means that I might spend that time. I might get to that place at the end of my life and say, what if it's been wrong? What if I didn't listen to that inner voice? An ancient teacher, his name is Patanjali. And Patanjali is known in the ancient world 1 to 3 centuries before the birth of Christ. There's no actual date of actual record of his birth and death. And he was the one who wrote the original Yoga Sutras and wrote a wonderful book that I immersed myself in a few years back called How to Know God. And Patanjali, one of the things that he said to these people, now remember, we're talking about something that's going back maybe 3,500 years or more. And here was this great teacher in the ancient world. And this is one of the things that he said. When you are inspired, the word inspired comes from in spirit. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you're truly inspired in your life, that is, when you're doing what you know you're here for, everything seems to work. The right people show up. You don't worry about being hungry. You don't worry about being tired. You're not concerned with whether or not anybody's going to like it or not. When you're truly inspired, that is, whether it's cooking or being with your children or writing or composing music or filling out tax forms, whatever it might be, when you feel inspired, everything works. And the reason that everything works is because you have left
the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired.
When you are inspired, all your thoughts break their bonds. As I explained earlier, being inspired is equivalent to being back in spirit. Before we showed up in form, our mind and the mind of God were synonymous, which means that we were free from the bonds of the ego mind. This is simply how the world of spirit works. It's impossible to have limiting boundaries or self-imposed shackles placed on us. When we're in harmony with the mind of God, we simply don't have thoughts that tell us we can't accomplish something. After all, our thoughts are of a higher energy. Returning to spirit results in a grand sense of being in tune with our uniquely divine purpose. Just imagine being able to go on and on for hours at a time without experiencing fatigue or hunger or thirst or mental exhaustion, all thanks to one factor, the willingness to be back in spirit. When you are inspired, your mind transcends limitations. When we're inspired, we remember that God is always in us and we're always in God. So we're incapable of thinking limited thoughts. We're transcendent. We've gone beyond the world of boundaries and entered a space of creative knowing. In other words, we surrender. We put ourselves under the guidance and control of our purposeful force. When you are inspired, your consciousness expands in every direction. When we're in spirit, every direction is possible for us at every moment because our consciousness happens within our mind. Now, this inner world of ours, reunited with its originating essence, doesn't think in only one direction. Rather, it allows all possibilities. Our consciousness is in the absolute state of allowing. All resistance in the form of thoughts is non-existence. When you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive. These dormant forces will come to all of us. They're actually alive and well and have been working on our behalf for as long as we've been here. Yet they appear to be dead to some because they've left behind their divine purpose, which we decided on long before we ever took on the insane ego. When you're inspired, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. The act of being inspired by some great purpose allows us to feel the essence of a spiritual being having a human experience, rather than the other way around. Patanjali suggests that we could never even dream of our greatness because we've been imprisoned by our beliefs about who we are. We bought into the idea that we were limited in our ability to create an all-encompassing life, and we were certain that we had no choice in our own destiny. We defended our need to acquire more and to live a scarcity consciousness in which we competed with everyone else for a meager slice of the whole pie. All of these imprisoning thoughts result when we're not guided by spirit. Moving into a state of inspiration removes all of those restraining ideas. As Patanjali notes, we'll discover someone we couldn't imagine because we were incarcerated in ego's jail, imprisoned by what we now recognize from our inspired viewpoint as an illusion. We need to awaken from the bad dream that has stupefied us in the fog of ego and live from the blissful perspective offered by being in spirit.
So some of the things that you can do on a daily basis to begin to put this principle into practice are, I think, one of the most important things. The very first one, I have a sign on my refrigerator that I look at every day, and so do all of my children, and it says, I love what I do, and I do what I love. And this is a very important principle to have in your life. If you're doing something and you don't love it, then change your attitude toward it, or B, change what you're doing. But as long as you have the option of using love in your life, then you want to do what you love and love what you do. So practice saying that over and over again. And when you find yourself about to complain and find fault with something, remind yourself, I'm doing what I love and I'm loving what I do. And I always have the choice to love it. Even if it's something that I would rather not be doing at the moment, you can still do it with a sense of love. And then the second thing I would recommend in honoring your worthiness to receive is to make every effort to remove the habits that you have of pessimism and negativity and judgment and complaining and gossip and cynicism and resentment and fault-finding. All of these kinds of ways that we have in our inner dialogues and our outer dialogues. You get these words out of your vocabulary, and you replace them with words of optimism and love and acceptance and kindness and peace. as your way of communicating, as your way of processing your world and all the people that are in it. It's just a habit. Most of these things about complaining about the weather or complaining about the way your Aunt Tilly does her hair or not liking the way the dog comes in the morning or whatever it is, all of these things are just habits that you've cultivated, and they keep you from feeling worthy of receiving all that you would like to have manifesting. Love is the energy that will bring that to you, and if you don't experience and use this love in your own communications, then it will be blocked from your life. I'd also, of course, always give yourself quiet time each day to erase any feelings that you have of unworthiness. One of the cliches of our culture today is that God doesn't make any garbage. God doesn't make any mistakes. And you are not a mistake. You are absolutely as holy and divine as everyone and everything else on this planet now, or that has ever been here or ever will be. That divine energy and force is within you. It can't be taken away from you. And just take a moment or two every time that you start putting yourself down or finding fault with something about yourself to remind yourself that you are a divine creation. You are a piece of God. And when you put yourself down, you're literally putting God down. And that's something you want to avoid doing. I would recommend also each day that you read spiritual literature or poetry. You'll see a lot of poetry and a lot of references to spiritual literature throughout this program and all of the programs that I've produced for Nightingale Conant and in all of my books, because it's something that I work at every day. I can't go into a bookstore without coming home with some new piece of poetry or new essays that someone might have written, and I just set them in key places in my house, and I read them, and I encourage other people to read them, and I take passages out of them. It's almost like doing my spiritual homework, and I do it each and every day of my life. Also, I would allow yourself to be surrounded by things of beauty as much as possible. One of the things that we have in our home is fresh flowers every day. They're always there, and when they have a tendency to dry out, then we replace them with new flowers. And nice photographs, and putting on our walls pictures of the children and good times and wonderful memories, so that we can look at these things of beauty, including pictures of yourself. And I would also practice kindness toward yourself as frequently as possible. The more that you can remember that you are worthy of that kindness, and give yourself a chance to just do something extra nice for yourself. You know, get that expensive thing on the menu, or buy yourself that little bottle of perfume, or give yourself the option of having a glass of wine on an airplane, or sitting in first class, or whatever it is that might be something that you would enjoy. The final thing that I would do in assessing my worthiness is to begin to process the universe as a friendly place rather than an unfriendly place. I mean, this is the only place that you have. This air that you're breathing is very friendly. This fire that keeps you warm, this sun that keeps you warm, it's very friendly. And so is the grass that you walk upon, and so is the snow that falls down, and so is the rain. Everything about the universe is supportive of you. So see it as a friendly place, rather than a place that is conspiring against you.
Extraordinary encompasses most of ordinary. Since we all live in the same physical world, there will always be forms to fill out, and rules that demand our obedience, and bills to pay, and family obligations to attend to. But extraordinary consciousness is associated with your soul, that invisible, boundaryless energy that looks out from behind your eyeballs and has very different interests than your ordinary self does. The ideal of your soul, the thing that it yearns for, is not more knowledge. It is not interested in comparison or winning or light or ownership, and not even happiness. The ideal of your soul is space, expansion, and immensity. And the one thing it needs more than anything else is to be free to expand, to reach out, and to embrace the infinite. Why? Because your soul is infinity itself. It has no restrictions or limitations. It resists being fenced in. And when you attempt to contain it with rules and obligations, it is miserable. Your invisible self is extraordinary because it is a fragment of the universal soul, which itself is infinite. The part of you that knows you have a greatness and is stirred by the idea of you expanding and removing any and all limitations is what I'm addressing here in Wishes Fulfilled. This is your new self-concept, one that is inspired by your soul. So let's take a look at this idea, and then examine what you need to do in order to make your self-concept congruent with how you want to live your life. and the powerful role you can begin to assume as a co-fulfiller of all of your rational, sensible wishes and desires. So what is your self-concept? Simply put, your concept of yourself is everything that you believe to be true. And everything that you believe to be true about yourself has landed you precisely where you live and breathe every day of your life. Your beliefs about yourself are like the ingredients in a recipe that you use to create your self-concept. You begin this exciting adventure of changing your concept of yourself by being willing to die to your present self. That's right, by relinquishing your personal history as the arbiter of your life. You cease to resist your fuller potential. You simply no longer choose to form your identity on the basis of what you've been taught. Remind yourself that everything you believe to be true has brought you to this point where you want to explore rather than resist your higher powers. In The Power of Awareness, Neville emphatically explains that to be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas for you to think from your ideas. How do you find the way to ideas that will help you change your thoughts? Start by saying and writing an affirmation that appeals to you. Create your unique, heartfelt affirmation, such as, I have a burning desire, an inner flame that will not be extinguished by outer forces, to know and live from higher regions, to be transformed so that my new concept of myself will no longer include any limitations. I am willing to challenge and change any thoughts that impede my having a higher vision of myself. I'm suggesting you open your thought process to a new idea that will help you as you begin changing your concept of yourself. You can think of yourself as a divine, limitless being rather than a person who doesn't have a choice when it comes to your thoughts. Think of yourself as an observer, contemplating and selecting thoughts that you choose from that never-ending stream of thoughts on your inner screen, 24/7, 365. Watch thoughts stream by from wherever they originate and observe them rapidly transitioning and combining and appearing and then disappearing. Snatch a thought from the running ribbon of thoughts and contemplate it. As you toss it around, notice how you feel, sad, depressed, happy, frightened, so on. Every thought going by has an imprint on your concept of yourself. First be the observer, and then the contemplator. Now become the choice maker, who can consciously decide to put that thought back onto the running stream and pick a different one, a thought that perhaps allows you to feel better. I am okay. I look fine. I will lose a few pounds. I am loved. I am divine. These, and millions more like them, are thoughts that you can opt for rather than the ones you've become accustomed to choosing in the past. This is how you begin a new process to change your concept of yourself. You accept as irrevocable that it is not you setting the stream of thoughts into motion, and that stopping thinking isn't possible at this stage of your evolution. At this stage, the essence of your being is to observe, contemplate, and then choose. This can all be done in a fraction of a nanosecond. The thoughts will keep appearing on your mental TV screen, just like the stock quotations, but you'll now be choosing the ones you want to focus on, gather, retain, or just let go. I'm encouraging you to initiate a habit of choosing thoughts and ideas that support feeling good and powerful, and that elevate you to a higher level of consciousness, where your self-concept welcomes your higher self.
But you gotta change your awareness of yourself, as Maslow said. And one of the ways that you change your awareness of yourself is to understand a very simple premise. Think of an apple pie. Here's an apple pie, and this apple pie, you take this apple pie and you take a slice of this apple pie and you put it over here. And then you walk over to the slice and you say to the apple pie, the slice of apple pie, what are you like? What are you like? And the little slice of apple pie says, I must be like what I came from. You wouldn't expect it to be pineapple. You wouldn't expect it to be cherry. You would expect it to be like what it came from, right? So why is it that we understand this, and yet we don't understand that we too must be like what we came from? We are pieces of God. We came from a divine source. We have to We have to trust in our divinity. We have to understand that we are not this package of bones and skin encapsulating, these internal organs, that's not who we are. That's what we call the false self. It's an illusion. That who we really are is what we came from. And what we came from is eternal, it's infinite, it's kind, it's unlimited, it excludes no one. So that if we understand that we are really here as spiritual beings, just having a human experience, not the other way around. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience, it's the other way around. Our essence is our greatness, what we came from. We must be like what we came from. I've just taken up this new practice. It's called yoga. Now, I'm 65 years old, and I've decided that there are certain things that I was told that I couldn't do at earlier stages of my life that I've decided I'm taking on. I don't care what my age is or what anybody else has told. What Mrs. McConnell told me in the 6th grade at Marquette Elementary School in Detroit, that you don't have to come to art class. It's really not for you. You can go dribble basketballs maybe, but you don't want to come to art. This is because she saw some of my stick drawings that I was pretty proud of. And then there was Mr. Tubbs at Denby High School in Detroit, who, when I turned in my first drawing in drafting class, I didn't even know what drafting was. When I just signed, they threw me in there because the school was so overcrowded. It was my elective. And I turned in my first drawing, and he asked me the question, "Do you have a little sister?" Like in the 3rd grade, because she perhaps is the one that did this way. That was my whole view of my artistic ability. I'm out there painting now. I'm doing painting. And I'm also doing yoga, all right? And I've learned some things about myself in the process of doing this. It was like a change in attitude, a shift, a belief system that I no longer was hanging on to. And that's what we have to do. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter what your beliefs have been. It doesn't matter what other people have tried to convince you of in the past. When you move into spirit and have a knowing that I have the capacity to be able to do this, you leave behind the false self. And the false self is really nothing more than this ego. Look, you came from a divine place that is unlimited, that says you can be anything you put your attention on. And then you bought into a whole series of beliefs that were handed to you by very well-meaning people attempting to convince you that you had limitations, that you couldn't do this, that this wasn't possible. And I'd like to suggest to you that you took on something called an ego. E-G-O. An ego. You came in from divinity, you came in from a place of unlimited, you show up and you edged God out. E-G-O. And when you edge God out, it doesn't mean that you're sacrilegious, it doesn't mean that you're not a moral person. It means that you take on a belief system that says, who I am is no longer this infinite divine being who can step outside and observe this body and believe that he can make it do whatever I put my attention on and use it to have the same powers that is spoken about in the New Testament. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. It's within each and every one of us, except that we bought into an idea that who we are is what we have, who we are is what we do, who we are is what other people think I am, who I am is separate from everybody else, who I am is separate from what I would like to attract into my life, and who I am is separate from my source. And we believe in this separation, and we believe in this identity that who I am is what I have. So we start accumulating. We accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. The problem is that when you stop accumulating, and if who you are is what you accumulate, then you have no value as soon as your things start to disappear, as soon as they wear out, as soon as somebody else takes them, as soon as the government taxes them, as soon as any number of things. Who I am is what I do. If you no longer can do, then you aren't. You no longer exist. Who I am is my reputation, and we raise our children often to believe that what's most important is what other people think of you. Fit in. Do what you've been told to do. Do what the crowd does. Follow the herd. And you know what happens, what you step in when you follow the herd. So we take on all of these sort of false ideas, and we have a tendency to believe them. And inspiration is moving back into spirit, and it's moving back into spirit in such a way that you no longer accept yourself as anything other than divine.
Transform, going beyond your form. Listen to each thought, let it sink in, and begin putting it into practice, beginning now. Number 1, know in your heart that there is an invisible intelligence in everything, and you have the power to make contact with this divine intelligence and create a life of bliss. There is something divine that rolls through all things. You can't get a hold of it? A little seedling has treeness in it when it is put into the ground. You can't see treeness, you can't see the tree, yet you know it is in there. And same with you. You have greatness, you have an energy that is so powerful, and it flows through you and in everything that you come into contact with. Know it, begin to trust it, and you'll find yourself experiencing transformation in your life. Number 2, this is your sacred quest. The doorway to higher levels of awareness in your life opens inward. And most of us spend our lives facing the wrong way, looking outside of ourselves for the solutions to our problems. Where inward, in that silent, quiet, empty space within, is where the universal intelligence lies. It is where your essence as a human being is. Begin to look inward rather than outward each day. Number 3, become aware that there are no accidents in our intelligent universe. Realize that everything that shows up in your life has something to teach you. Appreciate everyone and everything in your life. You need to begin looking inward at who you are and why you are here, instead of outward at the physical world or anything in it. Make this a day of appreciation, a day of being in awe and bewilderment of everything that you come into contact with. Appreciate your liver, appreciate your eyes, appreciate your legs, appreciate your mind, and everything that you come into contact with. Instead of judging it, just appreciate it. Number 4, draw your inner energy from the beauty that surrounds you. When you do so, this energy reception will become a source of strength and sustenance in your life. As you begin practicing beauty appreciation and seeing it in all things that you encounter, including all people, as you begin to see the fullness of God in everyone rather than something to judge, you'll find a new kind of bliss in your everyday life. Number 5, be peaceful, experience silence, meditate, and really listen to God. The result will be that you will find the solution to each and every one of your problems, whether it be related to relationships or finances, health or self-image, all within yourself. The peace and the quiet and the solitude all come from an understanding that God's one and only voice is silence, as Herman Melville reminded us. And if you can just be, even for one moment today, just peaceful and just go within, you're going to find a bliss that you perhaps didn't ever know before. Number 6, forgive yourself for your transgressions. See that mistakes are lessons for you to transcend. Release yourself from the tyranny of self-recrimination. Make the decision to be free. Everything that's ever happened to you in your life has happened for a reason. And when you are filled with an absence of self-forgiveness, and you're full of recriminations about what you did or shouldn't have done, or what you should have done, all of these kinds of things are really a message that you're sending to the universe saying, God's plan doesn't work and mine does. That's really an insidious thing to say. Everything that you've done or experienced is over, and you had something to learn from it. So forgive yourself and move on with your life. Number 7. Write down this ancient truth and reread it on a daily basis. When you seek happiness for yourself, it will always elude you. When you seek happiness for others, you will find it yourself. Number 8. Attempt to remove all enemies from your thoughts. The same intelligence that flows through you flows through all human beings. When you know that you are connected to all, you cannot fathom striking out at others, let alone feeling hatred for them. Or another way of saying this is, on a round planet, there's no choosing up sides. We all are here for a reason. We all have the same divine energy flowing through us. And when we stop thinking of ourselves as separate from everyone else, we begin to see and experience the love that we are here for in the first place. In my opinion, God doesn't want us to love God. God wants us to learn to love each other. That's what it means to be a holy being, to not have enemies, and to love each other. That's truly what loving God is about. Number 9. Release everything that you have been told is impossible or unrealistic, and allow yourself the freedom to make your own contract with God about what is possible for you. Examine all of the doubts that you have about miracles and miracle workers, and replace the doubt with openness. Be open, and release everything that you hate.
Love and God, love and divine essence are exactly the same, and they are unconditional. You have to have the same love for God or for this divine essence that it has always had for you. Through the worst of your days, through the lowest points in your life, this love has always been there. It's available to you. You could take it at any time. You're never turned away. And it's a supply that's inexhaustible. You can't exhaust it. You can't make it go away. It is there. So there is a power in unconditional love that is very difficult for most of us to grasp. I don't know if you've ever been around a being who lives and experiences unconditional love. But when you are, you discover that the energy that they radiate is infectious, like being in a room with Mother Teresa. Just being in her presence. They said of Jesus, they said of Buddha, that when they would go into a village, just their presence in the village, nothing more, just their presence in the village would change the consciousness of those around them. From the perspective of having this divinity within you, which is a love for what is going to manifest, what happens when you start picturing your world this way is that your life starts to change. What changes is you feel more peaceful. Love and peace, unconditional love and peace, really go hand in hand. And when you get this quality, and what I suggest to you here is that in order to practice this, to understand that you sleep better, you eat better, you automatically begin to take better care of your body. Toxins are no longer that important to you. Exercise becomes something that you just absolutely do because you're treating your body with unconditional love. And it demands that, it encourages that, it wants that. It doesn't want to be dreary, it doesn't want to be overweight, it doesn't want to be drugged up, it doesn't want to be lethargic. It wants to be flowing because the universal energy that makes the whole thing work flows. It doesn't stop. That energy isn't stopping. It's not stagnant. It's a flowing. When you start doing these things and these changes start taking place, what happens is also the prosperity that you thought you couldn't have also begins to flow. You've stopped all blockages. And while this just sounds like, oh yeah, but I don't have to do anything, you will do something. You will act upon this unconditional love. It's like go on a program for 3 days. Make a 3-day program in which you are going to communicate with your spouse, your lover, one of your children, a friend, a coworker, a boss, someone that you are close to. And every thought that you are going to have directed at that person is going to be one of unconditional love. No matter how crappy they may act, no matter how much complaining they may do, no matter how much you find them to be irritating or whatever, you are going to respond with unconditional love. Not gushy, oh, isn't that great, you're throwing up on me again. Not that at all. But just the thought, the absence of judgment, the absence of anger, the absence of the ego demand that says, you know, you should really be like I am. You're wrong and I'm right. You just let go of that. Try it for 3 days. A 3-day program of unconditional love. And watch what happens to your energy level. And watch what happens to the things that you want to manifest in your life. And begin to notice how you're sleeping and what the content of your dreams are. And notice how other people begin to treat you. You see, unconditional love is joy and it's also power. There's an enormous power, but it's not the power that is an investment in having power over others. It's a power of being able to tune in finally to the thing that makes the whole universe work. What do you think keeps this whole planet from falling off into an abyss? What do you think it is that keeps your shoulder from falling off? What do you think it is that keeps the cells of your eyeballs in their sockets? There's a force, there's an energy, there's something that is working that keeps everything in place, that makes it all work, that makes it all flow. You finally begin to tune into that. You start to trust your nature more than you trust your intellect, which is your ego. Your nature knows how to work. It knows how to make your body work. Your nature knows exactly how many nutrients to send to all the different organs of the body. You don't have to think about that every time you eat something. It's working. Your nature knows how much oxygen to take in and how much to let out. You don't need a formula for that. Your intellect says that water there, it can't possibly be made up of 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen. Those are gases. Your intellect says there's no way. But nevertheless it is, isn't it, as we examine it. So your nature works perfectly in perfect harmony, as does everything else that keeps the oceans from tilting on their side and having tidal waves. This nature of yours that you are in, that is in you, that you are not separate from, is flowing. It's perfect. It's unconditional. It doesn't judge. It doesn't ask anything. Be that, and the rest of this will fall right into place. It's astounding how powerful this unconditional love is.